Okay, so I think we're ready to start. Thank you very much. I think we have a great audience today. Uh, Let me introduce myself. My name is Pablo Evia, and I work as a coordinator of SCOPE. SCOPE stands for Sustainable Consumption and Production, and is a collaborative program within the framework of the Environment for Development Initiative that aims to foster substantial shifts in our consumption and production patterns. Through applied research, SCOPE prioritizes transitioning towards lifestyle that minimize environmental harm. And SCOPE is currently coordinated from EfD Central America, located in Costa Rica, specifically at the Tropical Agricultural Research and Higher Education Center, CAT. And today is my pleasure to present our speaker, Professor Francisco Alpizar. Professor Alpizar is currently chair and professor of the Environmental and Natural Resource Economics Group at the Department of Social Sciences of Wageningen University and Research in the Netherlands. Before this, he worked as a senior research fellow at the Economics and Environment for Development Research Program at the Tropical Agricultural Research and Higher Education Center, CATI, that is a leading multilateral research institute based in Costa Rica. Professor Alpizar is a prolific author and has published articles in prestigious journals such as Nature, Sustainability, Natural Climate Change, and the Journal of Public Economics, among others. He is also an international advisor and consultant to several organizations such as the Global Environmental Fund, the World Bank, and the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And in addition, he acts as the scientific leader of SCOPE. So it's again my pleasure to welcome Francisco that will be presenting his research that is called Disentangling the Chicken or Egg Problem of Household Waste Sorting and Segregated Waste Collection and RCT in India. So Francisco will have around 40 or 45 minutes to present his work. And then we will have a round of questions and comments. You can type in your questions in the chat if you want, and after the presentation, we also could open the floor for questions or comments to Francisco. So Francisco, again, it's a pleasure to having you today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Pablo, and thank you everybody for being here. It's always a pleasure to see everybody attending these seminars. This work is the typical product of SCOPE. Is a collaboration between Shivani from India, Sihan from China, and myself. We've been working this for quite a while, and this paper has seen the light. So we are very excited with the results. We are very excited with what is in the paper, but also because these are some of the first times we are presenting this work. Shivani, that I see is somewhere around here. Shivani. Ah, yeah, Shivani is there, and I are very eager to hear your comments and make sure that we are not saying anything dumb or wrong. Of course, if I say anything dumb or wrong, it's my fault, not Shivani's. All right, so let me start with a bit of motivation, and that is basically that the provision of some public goods is determined not by in some cases is not determined by, I don't know, several people agreeing to provide and contributing to the public good, or the government providing the public good, but sometimes is determined by the complementary behavior of private and governmental actors. And we can think of many examples. For example, in the context of adaptation to climate change, it's true that the government can do a lot, but if the individuals don't do their part, then it's very likely that neither is going to be adapted to climate change for real. Similarly, in the context of waste, if households segregate their waste, but governments do not collect it separately, then all private effort is lost. Or if governments collect waste separately, but households fail to segregate, then all public funds are lost or public money is lost. So this mismatch between individual and governmental action can result in a lot of wasted results. And this paper is about waste, but what I'm trying to convey here is that this potential mismatch is present in the provision of many public goods. And of course, when the public good is not provided or is not put in place, there is of course a lot of mutual blaming and you know, the very low clean waste or the very low separation rates that we see in some countries results in mutual blaming. Now, why are we focusing on waste? Worldwide, municipal solid waste, on average, consists of 44% organic, and the rest, and 38% recyclable materials. So this means that a very big share of waste is organic, and also means that a big chunk of waste can have uses beyond the initial intended use. In India, in particular, solid waste consists of 50% organic and 20% recyclable. So if we are able to really segregate these two, so if we are really able to have organic waste to one side and recyclable waste on the other side, then this can generate a series of benefits that go from reduced methane in landfills to more valuable recyclable material. So this segregation is key for an efficient waste management strategy. Now, of course, there is a lot of regulation on waste that in India in particular that mandates households to segregate, and also that ask municipalities to promote waste segregation at home. But this has had very little success. And as I said at the beginning, mutual blaming is in place. You know, governments complain that lack of segregation is because households don't do their part, and vice versa. Now, we try in this paper to disentangle what we call here a chicken and egg problem with a large-scale intervention that provides a guaranteed segregated collection service. These words, guaranteed segregated collection service, I'm going to say many times. So at the end, I'm going to hopefully convey the importance of this guaranteed segregated collection service. And then we evaluate different approaches to promote waste segregation at source. More specifically, we examine the effect of a one-shot segregation promotion campaign. Basically, we provide information and in-house sorting devices. For a small subgroup, we are going to provide also periodical reminders to the households. What is cool about this paper is that this is an RCT on waste, which is extremely difficult to do. And here Shivani should be our hero. We are also looking at actual household behavior, which in the context of waste is very difficult to do because waste typically is non-observable. And we do this in a developing country context, specifically in Palwal, India. Now, let me just mention a couple of papers here that are important to explain this idea behind chicken and egg, and they are important for our conclusions later. So this issue of how to get households to segregate have been studied before. In the context of India, Shivani and others have explored an information campaign, and they find that the effect dwindles over time. The difference between that study and ours is that in that study, there is no guaranteed segregation. Nepal, in the context of Nepal, find no effect of an information campaign on segregation. So again, they find that our treatment has absolutely no effect. They do this in the context of no guaranteed segregation. Bernstein and others find, in the Swedish context, they find a change, but then a shift back to the original behavior. And Vollard and Soest, in a paper that is now needs to be adjusted here, is 2024 actually, has just been out in JIM. They show that behavioral interventions resorting to social norms, like the ones we are doing, are not really effective. Whereas financial punishment is. All right, so what we find is that in the absence of a guaranteed segregation by the government or by some sort of NGO or authority, information campaigns deliver no outcomes or very short-lived outcomes. So what is our contribution to the literature? We basically explore if this result that is coming so clear out of the literature holds under a guaranteed segregated waste collection system. We are able to measure several outcome variables. Particularly, we can find the rate of segregation at homes, that is how many households are segregating, and also the amount of segregated waste. Another important element of our RCT is that is based on actual behavior. The outcomes of interest here are going to be before and after for guaranteed segregated services, and the average treatment effect for the information campaign given the guaranteed segregation service. A quick description of the study site. We did this in a city of Palvo. This is a city with a population of about 1 million. In 5 wards of the city, there are about 8,300 households that have the option of door-to-door collection. This is a service that is provided by the municipality and is going to be the baseline for our work. Now, we choose these 5 wards to run our experiments because first, there is availability of reliable waste collection service. And we believe this is the basis for any meaningful effort, right? We're not collecting all waste. We are collecting recyclables. So the rest, let's say, waste that is not recyclable or that is clean organics, that's to be collected by the waste collection service. So this sentence here, first we have to have waste collection, and then we have to have waste segregation is underlying our experimental design. Let me describe the 4 main components, or 3 plus something. We have, as I said, a guaranteed segregated waste collection service. We have an intervention. We measure waste segregation, and then we have a follow-up survey that I'm not going to be presented because I think I will run out of time. So what is the guaranteed segregated service? So this is a separate service from what the municipality is providing. We put rag pickers in charge of this, and this is a key element because the income of the rag pickers depends partially on selling the clean recyclables. So that guarantees, in a way, that the waste that is segregated is properly disposed of. Now, the rag pickers only collected segregated waste. So clean inorganics, as I said, and unsegregated waste and organics, clean organics, that is all left for the municipal service to handle. Now, what you have there to the right of your screen is a decision tree, and that determines our outcome variable. So to determine how we define a household that segregate. So the first thing is that there must be 2 bins in the house. If the answer is no, well, then we mark it as not segregated. If the answer is yes, and then we move towards checking whether there is contamination of the waste. So if we find like things like plastic and cartons in the organic bag, so that means the organic waste is contaminated, or there is no visible organic waste in the inorganic bin, then we mark this as segregated. So these 2 things we need clean organics and clean inorganics or clean recyclables. They need to be segregated. If that's not true, then we mark it as not segregated. And we believe this part of having with 1 visible inorganic object in the organic bag, then we will mark this as not segregated. And just 1 organic waste in the supposedly inorganic bag, then we mark it as not segregated. So it's a very strong let's say, decision rule for marking households as segregating or not. Now, when it comes to the intervention and the measuring of the outcome variables, we have basically two treatments. One is a one-shot campaign with information on better waste segregation. And the second treatment arm is the same as T1, but it adds a series of reminders. This is a leaflet with information on waste segregation. As I said, we have the waste is collected by rag pickers. These rag pickers work in teams of 2 with our enumerators. And our enumerators do 2 things. They check the waste and they weight the waste. We do 13 rounds of this, 13 visits, 1 prior to treatment at the baseline. And this means before we actually provide the bins and the information, and 12 thereafter. All right, so here you have the information campaign. Of course, you don't understand. Anybody except Shivani understands what is written here. So let me translate it, because now I'm fluent in Hindi. First, on top it says how to separate your waste, and then it provides the picture of the 2 bins. It also says that this follows the management guidelines of the government. It explains here in this list what to put in the green dustbins. This is a list of organic material. And then what to put in the blue dustbin. This is nothing organic, so only dry waste in essence. This is it. Now the reminders do include a series of, we can call this moral pleas or injunctive norms. They explain why should we separate garbage at home, and these are the 3 reasons provided here. Wet garbage can be used for compost, there will be no smell or dirt on the road, and the work of rag pickers is reduced and their conditions improved. So as you can see, it's not a dramatic intervention that changes everything in the life of a particular household. What we provide is information first and a reminder second. 6 months after the last monitoring session, when our project was over, and also when 6 months after the guaranteed segregated service was over, we showed up unannounced and asked them, run a survey, a follow-up survey, and asked them, are you still segregating and using the governmental segregated service? Remember that the government provides this. This is, of course, self-reported. I'm not going to make a big fuss of this, but I think it would be interesting to see it at the end, because it provides a interesting insight, I think so. Now, this is waste disposal behavior by treatment group. As you can see, there is no big differences. The percentage of households segregating their waste is around 12% in all treatment arms, and the waste in kilograms per day is about 1.10 kilograms per day per household. So this is basically the baseline, and we are going to compare the segregated baseline, the guaranteed segregated service against the baseline at some point. There are 4 sets of results that I will try to describe today. Average treatment effects on the share, average treatment effects on the weight of collected inorganics. And then, because the results are a bit surprising, and I should be preparing you for getting surprised. I think we did a lot of work trying to understand where the results are coming from. So we have this exploration of whether the increase that we observe in segregated waste happens at the intensive or the extensive margin. And then we close with a cost effectiveness analysis of the rag picker service. This is thinking of scaling this up. Could this be profitable for the rag pickers if they were to implement it themselves? Now, these are the results. What you have here is 0% of households segregating. This is our control. When I point with the arrow, you see the arrow, right? Paulo, yes, yes. So this is the control, and as you can see, it remains more or less at the initial level. The red line is what happens with our information campaign as time passes. Here you have the 12, the initial plus 12 rounds of visits, and the yellow line is what happens with the campaign plus reminders treatments. So I'm sure that you are now all saying like, nah, this is not credible. How come this has this enormous effect that is increasing over time? We were also very impressed. Look, for example, at the effect of our reminder here, and then a huge effect here again, meaning that we plus the reminders, you end up almost with 97% of households segregating their waste at the end of this study. Let me just put the results in actual numbers. So here you have the econometrics, but focusing on the results, the information campaign alone increases the households' probability of waste segregation by 45 percentage points. This is 3.6 times the baseline level. Additional reminders raise this result by 15 percentage points to 60 in total. That is 5 times the baseline level. So these results are enormous. Now, we thought, well, let's see the effect on weight now. So what you have here is the table with the econometrics, but let me describe this in words. Basically, the first treatment, the information campaign, given a guaranteed segregated service, increases the weight of segregated inorganics by about 0.02 kilograms per household day. Now, this looks small, but this is an increase of 148%. And in the case of the information plus reminder, it's almost 200% increase. That is the weight of clean inorganics. When we saw this, we thought, oh, maybe there is a rebound effect, right? Because maybe there are, somehow more waste is being produced. So we did this analysis on total waste, not segregated, but this is the combined weight of waste. And as you can see, no result is significant. So there is actually no rebound effect. Then we thought, well, we need to dig deeper into this to understand what is happening. So we ask ourselves, does the amount of segregated waste increases at the intensive? That is, by how much waste how much, let's say, clean inorganics are being collected, or at the extensive, that is, how many households are actually segregating. And what we see is that the results are driven entirely by the extensive margin, that they are driven by how many households are actually segregating the waste. Actually, what we see here in both the treatment one and the one-shot campaign per reminder, what we see is a small decrease in the amount of waste that is generated. So conditioning on segregation, the effect on the weight of segregated inorganics are actually negative. So this goes to show that the really powerful effect is the one at the extensive margin. That is, how many households actually join the segregation movement. We do 2 additional analyses here. The first one is we look at the consistency. Remember that at the beginning, we have 12% of households segregating, and we ask ourselves, what happened with these households? And what happens is that the households so this means this is a picture of the houses that were segregating at the baseline. And we see, that's why everybody has a 1 here, and we see that it goes down, right? These households, they were segregating the particular day that we visited, but it wasn't like they were hardcore waste segregators. As you can see, the control group of these households actually, these households, when they fall on the control group, they revert to more or less the average that we observe, around 12%, 20%. But if they were in the treatment, they continue segregating both the information and the and here is the results of our survey. Remember that these are self-reported behavior. So when we asked households in the control, are you segregated? This is 6 months after their last visit, right? This list, we see an increase, but of course, this is lying. This is just people telling us what we want to hear, so that's normal. But we see that households that were under treatment 1 or treatment 2, they continue to be significantly different. Their segregation rate is significantly larger than the other households. So if you net both results by what I'm just calling lying, say, lying in a survey, you still see an important difference. Okay, so let me just, in anticipation of potential questions, let me say something about this yellow line. What you see here is when we have first reminder, the vertical lines are reminders. Of course, segregation goes up. Then there is a second reminder with not a lot of effect, a third reminder that has a final effect, and then another one that doesn't. Of course, this last one is partly due to the fact that there is no room there for increases. I presented this paper recently in the context of the Dutch Association of Environmental and Resource Economists, and a professor here in the Netherlands told me these results are not surprising. This is actually what we saw in the Netherlands and in other countries in Europe when the service became guaranteed, when the government really committed to segregating waste. They saw a similar increase in the number of households segregating. So that provides support to this very, very large increase. For him, this crazy jump, that is crazy, I mean, from an RCT perspective, was not surprising at all, given the evidence in the Netherlands and other countries in Europe from the 80s, actually. So we then went to ask about the financial viability. To produce this idea of financial viability, we needed a couple of assumptions. So basically, rag pickers in our experiment, they earn between 500 and 1,000 Indian rupees per day from their present mode of collection, that is, from going to the landfill and extracting the recyclables from the. Now, for us, they worked between 2 and 3 hours. They collected between 13 and 29 kilograms. Now, with these numbers, we can, and if we add these assumptions, the first one is that the intervention will have similar effectiveness in terms of improving waste segregation rates. Second, rag pickers will not work just 2 to 3 hours like they did with us. They will actually work 8 hours a day and are 3 times faster than in our experiment. Why 3 times? Because one general complaint that we have from the rag pickers is that we were too slow. Of course, the enumerators were too slow because they had to weight the waste, and also because this was a random selection of households. Sometimes they needed to go up a building, collect waste from a household, and then down and up another building. So this is very slow. They think they can be at least 3 times faster than in our experiment. The price for per kilogram of clean recyclable is between 7 and 30 Indian rupees. So this means that under these assumptions and giving our results, rag pickers would earn between 500 and 2,500 Indian rupees, which is at least as good as what they're doing now. This is not even accounting for other factors like health benefits of not going to the landfill that are and sort of cleaning working environment, less pollution in the streets, and so on and so forth. So we believe this is clearly financially viable. Now, we know that given that the government was providing this segregated collection service, and given that service collection rates were about 12%, then we can see that providing the segregated collection service alone without the household level campaign has little impact on the household segregation behavior. So part of the chicken and egg story seems to be right. Providing the service is not enough. Now, previous research, and that's why I spent some time talking about previous research, finds little effect from information campaigns alone. So just information is not enough. What we find in our study is that when you put the two together, then this vicious circle that has trapped India and many other developing countries into these undesired no collection, no segregation state can be broken. So what we need is indeed this combined approach. We find basically that the one-shot information campaign, given a guaranteed segregation service, brings about very large effects on waste segregation. And this effect apparently is not really fading away. It actually grows over time. Remember that our information campaign, it was a one-shot information campaign. And we visit these households many times after, and the effect was actually growing over time. Now, one last line here that I want to add is involving the informal sector in the guaranteed collection service is viable. Now, there is a big but to this, and that is that part of the guarantee segregated service comes from the fact that the income for the rag pickers depends on their collection of waste and of them doing this properly. Clean recyclables are much more valuable than contaminated ones. Now, if we get the government or the municipal government involved in this, there must be other ways of guaranteeing the collection service, right? Because if the government all of a sudden starts paying the rag pickers, then this part of the guaranteed collection service is not necessarily in place anymore. But this is actually something that can be figured out by the relevant authorities. Thank you. That's what I wanted to talk today.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Really, really interesting results, very relevant. I will say that maybe for the Netherlands is not surprising, but for developing countries I think is a huge change which you have in your results. So we have a couple of questions by now. We will open the floor for questions. So I will read the question by Mark, and then Thomas can jump in for his question. So Mark says, I'm curious about how you got such high compliance rates. Were all households so willing to have the rag pickers come to their homes? I could imagine some might not like that and wonder if that's a research study artifact, that they trusted the study, but will not trust a scale program of this type.
Yeah, that's the caveat that I added at the end. I think the fact that the rag pickers were part of the study and so on, their income depends on what they collect, provides strength to or credibility to our statement that the system provided a guaranteed segregated waste collection service. But I think, Mark, your question was also about compliance rate with the experiment, how many people actually accepted to be part of the experiment. And this is actually something that the co-authors have discussed a lot, because we want to understand how people jumped on the idea of segregating their waste so willingly. I think part of the answer is that this is a very big problem. It's a problem that is in your household, right? And it's something that you need to handle all the time. And there is an eagerness by households to see something happening in this. That's why we have big compliance rates. And also the rag pickers will show at the home together with an enumerator So it also provided credibility, I think, to the study and to the fact that this was acceptable circumstances, right?
Thanks, Fran.
Mark, is
Thomas?
that what you ask?
Yeah, that's basically what I was asking. And, you know, in particular, knowing that these rag pickers are not necessarily seen as the most desirable people in society, like that it's a little bit surprising that people would just kind of let them in. And I think that that might be because of the fact that there was an enumerator there and, you know, it was sort of being monitored.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, probably this is actually something that we need to mention also as a caveat, right? That what you mean is that access to, say, the whole building might be restricted for somebody with I mean a low standing in society, but yes, this is actually something that we need to clarify in our paper. It's a good comment. Yes, the presence of the enumerator probably played a role. It was the enumerator asking for access, right, at the very beginning of the study, and not the rag picker. So in that sense, it was the enumerator who basically opened the door, and eventually the rag pickers were the one doing the hard work that might have contributed to high compliance rates. Yes.
So, Thomas, would you like to open your?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm far away out on a Swedish railway station here. So thanks very much, Francisco. Very interesting paper, very nice study. I think there are many similar coordinating problems. Of course, with a European perspective, the segregation of the waste is important because we wouldn't want to pick through the waste, but in an Indian context, the waste is regularly picked through by the waste pickers. In fact, many times I've seen Sandy used to have lots of studies on waste pickers, and and there would be in some places hordes of people. There would be the sort of those who picked metal, those who picked rag, those who picked paper, those who scavenged for food. They would sort of go through this. And last of all would come the official sweepers who were paid by the municipality. So like a dozen or half a dozen people pick through the same waste. And so there's a very obvious coordination problem and trust problem. I think your study is great, but I think there is more follow-up work on those issues of exactly who gets access. I mean, in many parts of the world, it's the mafia running the waste business, and so some of the waste is valuable on local markets to somebody, and so you will have people, not all of whom are nice, who will try to cherry pick your system. So there's, I think there's more work on these trust and organization, but it is a coordination exercise somehow. And
yes.
Of course, the better the role the state can play, or the municipality or someone, will probably help.
Yes, and actually, this is a long-lived interest of mine, because I think when we study public goods, there is this very, very strange setting in which sometimes we say public goods are provided by an authority, like, you know, national security, precisely because they are non-rivalrous and non-excludable. But sometimes we also have public good games in which we have different people contributing to a public good. But this is there are many circumstances where you need many people contributing to a public good, and still you don't get the public good unless there is state intervention, and particularly when it comes to big things like climate is a very obvious one, or similar challenges, global challenges. They are typically characterized by the need for households, or not households, let's say individuals, coordinating to provide the public good, and the government providing the public good also along the same lines. And I think those lines of research is very exciting to explore, because sometimes the government could be either not providing the good, so people don't contribute to the public good, and this or sometimes the government has a trembling hand or is uncertain about whether they really want to provide the public good or not, and by doing that they send households on the wrong path. This is, for example, in the context of public and private transportation, right? If the government people might want to take public transportation, but if the government doesn't provide suitable conditions to go by bus, train, or tram, then people are going to eventually, buy a car, and then it becomes harder for the government to actually solve the problem, because now people have a sunk cost into the car that they bought, and so this, congestion problems and pollution in cities, it's a similar problem in which you need both contributions to the public good from the individuals and a big contribution from the governmental side. So I think this is exciting.
And in the Swedish context, we kind of like the states to play a role, but I could imagine in India, one should also consider club goods. Most of the waste is generated by the upper middle income people, and they live in these gated communities, and the community could very well have a good waste management as a club good.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thanks.
I wrote a quick reply to Marcelo in the chat that indeed both control T1 and T2 had rag pickers and enumerators coming over and collecting the waste and measuring the waste, and that's why it's so cool to see the difference is truly imputable to the information treatment, right? Which is that's why what is so extraordinary is not the provision of the guaranteed segregated service, because we provide a guaranteed segregated service in the control and nothing or very little happens there, right? It is when you provide the two at the same time that you actually get this enormous jump.
Okay, thank you, Francisco.
Thanks, Fran. Shivani, please go ahead. We cannot hear you.
Ivani?
I think there is an issue with her microphone. But in the meantime, maybe Bethany says, how do you see these waste workers being impacted by the Future Plastics Treaty? How can that work be informed to support a just transition?
Bethany, you catch me off guard. I'm not really into the plastics treaty, but so I think I would need your help in answering your own question, I'm afraid.
Okay, answering my own question is hard. Well, because I don't work in anthropology or policy implementation and so on, but there are so the plastics treaty it's being negotiated now, but it should address plastics production and use and waste, and there are some countries, India included, that are focusing or pushing to focus only on the waste sector, while more ambitious countries are looking towards more upstream policies around production reduction and shifts into reuse refill systems rather than linear economies. But there are concerns about people working in the waste sector and protecting their livelihoods and incomes.
Yeah.
Around like sourcing valuable materials. But especially in contexts like in India, where the country is pushing very much to continue waste production under the guise of supporting waste pickers, like how can you change the dialogue around that to make sure that people working in the sector will continue to have sources of income, preferably that are safer and more sustainable?
Yeah, so it's a good point, because ultimately what we are saying is that the value of the collected clean recyclables is enough to get the rack pickers to provide the service and get the households to segregate. So it all hinges on this being a valuable commodity, if you like, or valuable thing to collect and sell. If that value collapses for one reason or another, then of course this solution will not work. Now, reuse has also its limitations. For example, there's always going to be glass instead of plastics being so clean glass also can be collected. I mean, glass can also be collected and sold for a big value too. So in that sense, I think not all of the value will be gone if let's say the treaty pushes towards less linear waste systems. But a big chunk of the value indeed comes from plastics. I think that will not be that will reduce the viability of a system like this. I mean, to be honest, and this is the best will be to have households segregate and bring their clean segregated waste into the proper bins, and there are modern systems to do this. But we are somehow operating within a second best, right? Where this is actually not happening. Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as going against the plastic treaty in order to sustain a system like this, even if improved, to be honest.
Thanks for your off-the-cuff thoughts. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay, of course. But I received your email, Bethany, and I'm really eager to start that conversation with you.
Yeah, get in touch.
Yep.
So Francisco, if I may, I have two questions about the context. Are the dustbins provided free of charge, or you will say that the cost of these dustbins is marginal, that they are not important in the treatment? And how do households pay for the waste collection? Because in some countries, this bill is attached to other bill, like electricity bills. Do you know something about how it's paid?
Yes, these are municipal costs. These are costs that you pay to the municipality. The municipality provides the service. Having said that, Pablo, we actually collected the data, and it's actually sitting there at the moment. We also collected willingness to pay from the households to see if they are actually willing to pay for this service. I've not discussed that here because we thought, well, why bring the whole thing of willingness to pay if the system seems to be viable in and on its own, right? So if people are capable of providing this service by the value of recyclables themselves. But I mean, Shivani could also say more about this, but what we find is that households were indeed willing to pay for this or similar services. We just as I think Gunnar is still around, but we try to do this willingness to pay study for different qualities of waste collection services in Tanzania. It was a very interesting study because I think in some countries where there is no proper waste collection, that should be the start. We should understand what are the preferences of households for waste collection services. And Tanzania was a very good place to start doing that analysis. It still is.
Thanks, Franz.
If there are any people from Tanzania, that's an invitation to get in contact.
That would be great. So is there any other? Well, Shivani says that yes, willingness to pay is positive for the majority of households, and the dustbins are not expensive. So I guess that is not important in the experiments.
Yes.
Good. Is there any other question that?
Move you to this side.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.